Today we continue on with our 2022 NHL Draft Review. We're going to take a look at the Edmonton Oilers and all of their selections from the 22 NHL Draft, as well as what other top prospects they have in their system that should make the NHL jump, hopefully, over the next few years. We'll get into all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're going to continue on looking at our top prospects from the 2022 draft and what else has already been selected here that's in the cupboard for the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, they're a young and exciting team, made some great progress this past year with a deep playoff run, and we want to see what else they can add to the mix in the next couple of years as these young players hopefully make the jump and graduate to the NHL. So first up, we're going to jump onto the computer. We're going to take a look at the summary of all their draft selections from the 2022 draft. We're going to look at each player a little bit more in depth, and then we're going to look at the other top prospects from the last couple of drafts and what else they have in their system here that should be able to hopefully make the jump over the next few years. So let's jump onto the computer and get started. Here's a summary of picks for the Oilers from the 22 NHL draft. Of course, as you can see, they only had 4 picks. A lot of these picks have been traded, trying to make team improvements here at the deadline, trying to make a run here, but of course it did go all the way to the conference finals this past year, so things have worked out for the most part. The first pick was Reed Schaefer, a left winger, born in September 2023, Edmonton, Alberta, born, 18 years of age, so they get the local boy, 6'3", 213, signed his ELC already as well, playing in the Western Hockey League for the Seattle Thunderbirds, where he had a solid year, 32 goals and 58 points in 66 games, and also had a long run here in the playoffs, 25 games where he put up 21 points, and of course had an appearance at the Memorial Cup. So certainly a great experience for him for this year of a junior. He can still go back and play junior another season or two, so certainly I expect him to continue to develop and should have a pretty decent ceiling here down the road. Their second pick wasn't until round 5, number 158th overall. Samuel Jonsson's the pick, a goaltender here from Sweden, 18 years of age, 6'5", 201 pounds. So obviously goaltending depth is a bit of a concern, I think, for this franchise. So grabbing a goalie who looks pretty solid at this stage of the draft is a pretty reasonable idea. Had a pretty good showing in the Swedish Junior League so far. Then they took a Russian prospect, Nikita Yevsayev, who was a very physical defenseman. As you can see here, not a lot of stats available for him playing over in Russia at the lower levels, but certainly a defenseman who expects to be quite defensive style minded. Obviously the Edmonton Oilers here could use that down the road. He's been playing over in the KHL, lower levels of the Russian league. 6'1", 187 pounds, still 18 years of age, left shot defenseman. Now, their final pick was a left shot center, Joel Mata, who's obviously from Finland, 20 years of age, 6'1", 200 pounds, was a very late pick here, round number 7, 222nd overall, playing this year for the University of Vermont, where he only put up 6 points in 32 games, so we'll see how he continues to develop. Being a 7th rounder, he likely played 3 or 4 years of college hockey before making the determination to turn to pro hockey. Let's take a look at the rest of the prospect pool here. Looking at some of the other players from previous drafts, we have the goaltender Stuart Skinner, who should make the full-time jump this year and be a full-time backup to new goaltender Jack Campbell. Of course, he's 23 years of age now, from Alberta himself, so a local product. He's put in his time at the American Hockey League level and has played 14 NHL games here as well. Hard to say what he'll become down the road, if he has the ability to eventually be the starting goaltender or not, or if he'll be able to, take the load off of Campbell to have more of a, 1A, 1B at some point. But for at least the first year, expectation is that Campbell is going to hopefully have to stay healthy and play a lot of games while Skinner continues to kind of get acclimated to the pro level of hockey. Of course, they also have Olivier Rodrigue, who's now 22, 6'1", only 158 pounds, was a second-round pick back in 2018. Played in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and has had a chance to play some pro hockey between the American Hockey League and the East Coast League. At this point, his likelihood of being an NHL goalie is starting to dwindle a little bit, but he still has time. A lot of goalies are not really fully developed until they're about 23 to 24 years old sometimes. We've seen the odd late-blooming goaltender as well, but Rodrigue, I think, at best would be an NHL backup goaltender, but we'll see how he goes. They also have Ilya Konovalov as well, who's another Russian goalie. He's 24, tall, 194 pounds, third-round pick from the 2019 NHL draft. So obviously he's been drafted now for 3 years, was a little bit of a, you could say, a late-blooming goaltender in an aspect here, but the Russian factor, I'm sure, played a role in him being drafted as late as he was, but he did get a chance to jump to North America last year, appeared in 17 games for Bakersfield, didn't do too badly, and he can continue to develop here over the coming years. Looking at their blue line, Philip Broberg's by far their top blue line prospect here. Left shot defenseman from Sweden, who's now 21. He was a first-round pick in 2019, taken 8th overall. Of course, he's appeared in 23 NHL games here so far, while also splitting last year in Bakersfield, appearing in 31 games, where he did play pretty well and put up 23 points. Obviously, I'm not sure how much NHL opportunity he'll get this year. A lot of that will likely depend on how well he does in training camp, but he's certainly a defenseman that they're pretty high on and somebody who they're hoping will become a full-time NHLer, especially considering how highly he was drafted. At this point, I'm not sure that it's more of a case of him not being ready. I think it's more of a case of just finding the right opportunity for him here. So I would suspect he'll likely get a little bit more NHL time for the coming season. So I have another defensive prospect here, Dmitry Samorukov, who's been in the system for a little while as well. He's 23 now, 6'3", 188, was a third rounder back in 2017. Only played one NHL game so far, but has had 2 full seasons at the American Hockey League level, putting up 15 points last year, 15 assists, so that's 18 points total, including 3 goals at Bakersfield last year. Obviously played 2021 in the KHL as well. So we'll have to see. Obviously, he played as junior in Ontario for the Guelph Storm, where he obviously put up some pretty impressive offensive numbers. So at his age, I would think that his limited opportunity to become a regular NHL player, but still an interesting prospect that's under contract here for the Edmonton Oilers for 1 more season. So we'll see what he can make of it here. Next up, we have Dylan Holloway, by far, in my opinion, their top forward prospect, a left winger, obviously born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, 20 years old, 6'1", 203 pounds, was a first rounder in 2020, number 14 overall, played a couple of years at the University of Wisconsin, played last year in Bakersfield, putting up 22 points in 33 games. Of course, he did have an injury last year, which is why his play was so limited, and he finally made his NHL debut in the Stanley Cup playoffs, playing in 1 game. He had very limited ice time, so there are no points to report, but certainly somebody I suspect will have a good shot at making the roster this year. Next, we have Carter Savoie, a left winger as well from St. Albert, Alberta, 20 years old, 5'9", 192, of course, brother of Matthew Savoie, who was just drafted here in 2022 in the first round. He was a 4th-round pick in 2020, 100th overall, played a couple of seasons for the University of Denver. Of course, they were the championship team in U.S. college hockey this past year, so certainly had a heck of a season, putting up 45 points in 39 games. He did join Bakersfield late in the season for a couple of American Hockey League games, but he's, to me, a very intriguing prospect, and I think has a real opportunity to be a good offensive player here for them, likely in a middle 6 role in the not-too-distant future. We also have Raphael Lavoie, a 2nd-rounder back in 2019. Lavoie was a highly touted prospect many thought would go in the 1st round, went in the 2nd round as well. Instead, obviously was from the Halifax Mooseheads, where he had a pretty solid campaign, putting up 73 points in his draft year. Then his year after, of course, he was traded to Mooseheads for under the playoff race, and he was traded to Chicoutimi, where he ended up having a real solid campaign, putting up 44 points in 30 games with Halifax, and then an additional 38 points in 25 games with Chicoutimi. So certainly had a real solid year and has had a chance to play some at the AHL level now. So it'd be interesting to see how much of a development we see out of Lavoie this year. Another real solid forward in the system here is Xavier Burgot, a right-shot centerman from Quebec, 19 years old, 6 feet tall, 180. Was a first-rounder last year in 2021. He played his junior hockey with the Shawinigan Cataracts, who were the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League champions this past year, and went on to compete in the Memorial Cup. And Burgot himself had a great season, putting up 75 points in 43 games, and then putting up a real solid playoff run, but 22 points in 16 games for Shawinigan. Of course, had a chance to play with Maverick Bourque, another top prospect for a different team in Dallas, but certainly a player that I think we should keep our eye on here. I think he could be on the fast track to possibly being an NHL player sooner than later, especially more so than a few of these other prospects here that we've looked at. We have Matvey Petrov, a right-shot left winger from Russia, 19 years old, 6'2", 181. Was a 6th-round pick in 2021. Played some junior hockey in the OHL for the North Bay Battalion, where he had a real solid campaign, putting up 90 points in 63 games last year. So that's a real solid offensive output with 10 additional points in 13 playoff games. So it looks like he can score and be a playmaker as well. Could be another late round steal here for the Edmonton Oilers. Now we have also Tyler Tullio, who's another right winger, 20 years old, from Ontario, 5'11", 180, was a 5th rounder in 2020, playing for the Oshawa Generals. Had a real solid campaign the last couple of seasons. Played in Slovakia when the OHL was shut down as well, where he had some good results. In the OHL in his draft year, he put up 66 points in 62 games, and he followed that up last year with 86 points in 65 games. So good step forward there for him. He was more than a point per game player in the playoffs as well. So that's my full review of the 2022 draft of prospects and other top prospects here for the Edmonton Oilers. Let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. They certainly have some interesting players that could be added to the mix and keep this team competitive for some time. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.